Namaste. Good evening. This is Dr. Aparna. I'm an Ayurvedic neuropsychotherapist, and today I'm back with a fascinating book on neuroscience. So, this book is called The Brain That Changes Itself. Author is Norman Doidge. So, The Brain That Changes Itself explores the groundbreaking research in neuroplasticity. So, and shares fascinating stories of people who can use the brain's ability to adapt and be cured of ailments previously incurable. So, for a long time, it was believed that the human brain operated like a machine with a fixed structure. However, there's no compelling scientific evidence that our brain can change itself. How? This is a phenomenon called neuroplasticity. So, neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to adapt and change, that is, to reform itself by making new neural connections throughout life. So, this book is a collection of stories from scientists, doctors, patients who have experienced the astonishing results of neuroplasticity. So, by incorporating scientific facts into narrative, Dr. Norman Deutsch makes it easy to understand how the brain works, when, how plasticity occurs, and how neuroplasticity can be used to cure diseases, prevent aging, and enhance learning. So, the author says that nature has given us a brain that survives in a changing world by changing itself. So that's why the name, the brain, that changes itself. So our brain is amazing. At first sight, that gray, wrinkly blob might not look like much, but our brain is responsible for everything we know and love about, being human. Brain contains your memories, brings emotions and sensations, controls movements, and allows you to think and make decision. So, analyzing and rationalizing. So, we are now learning more about neuroplasticity or the brain's ability to change. See, previously, scientists thought of the brain as fixed when fully formed, then deteriorated as we age. So, but with the rise of neuroplasticity, we now know our brains can heal themselves from injury, can change from experience, and regenerate even into old age. So, the author, Norman Deutsch, is a world renowned psychiatrist and psychoanalyst whose work is published in many journals and magazines. So, in the brain that changes itself. So, these are the stories of personal triumph from the frontiers of brain science. So, he sets out to investigate neuroplasticity. So the amazing facts this book has is your brain has an incredible talent of changing itself as needed through processes like unmasking. So using your imagination can change your brain. That means the brain can change itself through things like unmasking, neuroplasticity. For that we have to completely understand what is neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to reform itself by making new neural connections throughout life. So neuroplasticity, the word really came into existence in the 1960s as scientists started to explore the inner workings of the brain and found that neurons could reorganize after traumatic events. So, this book focuses on the stories how our amazing brain changes its structure with every activity we perform, every thought we create and every action we take. So this book highlights situations where learning disorders were, were actually they could overcome learning disorders. IQs were raised, memories sharpened, mental disorders cured, and lifelong character traits could change. So a woman born with half a brain that rewired itself to work as a whole. The story of the woman, that woman is, mentioned here, a woman labeled retarded who cured her deficits with brain exercises and now cures those of others. So blind people who learn to see and learning disorders cured. So IQs raised, aging brains rejuvenated, stroke patients recovering their faculties, children with cerebral palsy learning to move more gracefully, and entrenched depression and anxiety disappearing, and lifelong character traits changed. So all these were observed, and by, simply the neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity can work is when in diseases and disabilities, in learning and education, in preventing cognitive decline, in habits, obsession and pain, in sexual attraction and love. So there's a catchy phrase used in psychology, neurons that fire together wire together. That means when two events happen at the same time, those neurons involved in the experience fire together. That means thus they associate themselves with each other. As this connection becomes stronger, these neurons wire together. So, scientists thought for a long time that each area of the brain had a distinct function. And if that area got damaged, there was no getting that part back. Though some areas are responsible for specific roles, many often overlap and help each other. So, what happens is if one pathway becomes blocked, a secondary one is exposed and used instead. So the new pathway grows stronger with repeated use in a process called unmasking. So this book explains a story of a woman, a female named, who demonstrates this phenomenon. So for years she struggled with her balance of a loss of the part of her brain responsible for balance. She had balancing issues. So a neuroplasticity pioneer created a device called an accelerometer that sent balance signals through an electrode on her tongue. So what happened? This stimulated the area of skills. There is called a area of skills in the brain which is responsible for balance. After using the device consistently, it unmasked a new pathway for balance. So skills could miraculously balance on her own. So that area of, brain which was responsible for balance, instead of that, a new pathway was created because of that accelerometer. So she could miraculously balance on her own. So this process is unmasking. Next is next important point in this book is we can change our brains just with our imagination. So how? Just imagining what we want can make physical changes in the brain and body. An example of this is patients who experience phantom pain. So, this is the phenomenon where patient who lose a limb experience pain that seems to come from the limb that doesn't exist anymore. So, once it was considered a psychological problem, so phantom pain is now known to be a nervous system problem. So, how? The theory for why the pain still happens is that the brain map for that missing brain is eager for input and sends growth factors to nearby neurons. With this theory, neuroplasticity researcher V.S. Ramachandran created a mirror box that showed the mirror image of the working limb, so the brain would think the missing limb was moving and responding to input. The way they could unlearn the phantom pain. So, it worked wonders for a patient experiencing severe phantom pain after losing his arm in a motorcycle accident. After using it for 10 minutes a day for 4 weeks, the pain has disappeared. So, another way, it is just imagination. Only through imagination, the phantom pain, disappeared. So another way imagination can change our brain is through visualization. So an experiment had two groups of beginning pianists. One group sat in front of the piano and visualized playing a sequence, while the other practiced it for the same amount of time. When they mapped the subject's brain, the scientists discovered that just doing mental practice resulted in the same physical changes in their motor systems as the ones who actually practiced. So in other words, they had approximately the same skills. So imagining doing something and actually doing it aren't very different to the brain. That means brain cannot perceive whether it is real or imagination. Whatever you feed to the brain, that becomes the reality. So you can also use this imagination to strengthen your muscles. Another study had one group exercise by doing finger contractions over 4 weeks, while another just imagine doing the muscle contractions. At the end of the 4 weeks, the ones who actually did the exercise increased muscle strength by 30%. But get this, the ones who just visualized it increased their strength by 22%. And they didn't even have to do anything. So, any change in how we understand the brain ultimately affects how we understand human nature. So, the brain is a far more open system than we ever imagined, and the nature has given us a brain that survives in a changing world by changing itself. So, all addiction involves long term, sometimes lifelong, neuroplastic change in the brain. And plasticity is a normal phenomenon, and brain maps are constantly changing. So, these are some of the interesting facts of the book. We will explore some more in the coming session. So, thanks for watching. Stay tuned.